Hi, my name is Mark LeBlanc, and I happen to be the chairman of Indie Books International. Welcome to this episode of our podcast, our weekly podcast titled Marketing with a Book. We believe strongly that writing the right book is the ultimate marketing tool for your business, and we feel strongly, very passionately, that speaking is the number one strategy that you can embark upon, whether it's speaking for fee or speaking as what we call a showcase strategy, waiving your fee in front of a target-rich audience. The book is the tool, the speech is the strategy, can be your gateway to doing more of the good work that you feel called and compelled to do. And we are proud to have client success story after client success story after client success story. And today we have a great interview with a soon to be published author, Julia Demkowski. And before I introduce her, I also want to just add that she is the current chair of the IMC organization, or the Institute of Management Consultants. And the IMC conference will be held this year in Louisville, Kentucky. I believe it's the third weekend of November. Suzanne, if you could put those dates in the chat box, that would be terrific. And it'll be Julia's opportunity to shine on stage for her hard work as the chair of the Institute of Management Consultants. But let me introduce her a little bit more formally. She runs a consulting company called Stanford Management Consulting, and she works with business owners who want to streamline their operations and accelerate true business growth. As a speaker, she conducts presentations, including her bootcamp series, Fiscal Fitness, that zeroes in on how to increase cash flow and find hidden profits. Her soon-to-be released book, The 7 Deadly Sins All Business Owners Commit, reveals a fresh approach to systems, strategies, and structure that will increase your productivity and provide accountability for your results. As a result of her work, people often share they are more focused on what matters. They reduce their stress, have more fun, and make more money. On a personal note, Julia and her husband have a passion for adventure, exploring new destinations and hopefully leading to their next move, which would be their 23rd move. Suzanne, will you go ahead and pin Julia, and we'll get this interview on the way. All right, Julia, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be here. I appreciate it.
Did I leave anything out of your introduction? Is there anything that you want to add to it?
I don't think so, but my husband would cringe if anybody thought he moved 23 times. That's me that moved before we got married.
Oh.
I moved like 19 times.
Oh my gosh. So you have the passion for adventure.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. Julia, I just want to start this episode by having you give us a window into your world, what we would call your defining story. Just give us a little bit, take a couple of minutes and give us a little bit of your background. And how did you get from where you were to where you are today?
So after college, I just evolved into troubleshooting right away. And I worked in the hotel industry and ended up moving like every 3 to 6 months, going in and doing projects to identify what changes needed to be made in that particular hotel for the Holiday Inn International brand. And from there, I ended up going back into healthcare, and I kind of did the same thing. So hospitals that were getting ready to go through joint commission, the company would send me in to get the particular hospital or hospital system prepared to go through joint commission. And then I ended up meeting my husband in St. Louis, Missouri. And I knew then I couldn't move again. At that time, I had moved 19 times. So I went to work with a food distribution company as an internal consultant, and I helped them build their food nutrition services contracts division. So then the rest is history, because we moved to Virginia. I went back and got my master's, and then I started Stanford.
Wow. And not that we need to get this out of the way, but let's just shift gears a little bit and talk about the IMC, the Institute of Management Consultants. How long have you been a member? And that's where I met you, was at the IMC conference, I want to say about 6 years ago, maybe?
2017.
2017?
Yes. 2016. I'm sorry, 2016 is when I first met you.
Okay, 2016, and Henry and I were doing a pre-conference session, I believe, and you were in that audience. So I guess there's a perfect example of how Henry and I were speaking as part of a strategy, and you were in our audience, and we met and have developed an incredible working relationship. And now you're about to publish, hate to say this, your first book. Because people with a deep well of expertise never stop at one book. But tell us a little bit about IMC and the upcoming conference.
So when I started Stanford Management Consulting, as like everyone else, I was always on the internet looking for ideas and looking for associations. And I stumbled upon this series of tips that Mark Haas was producing for IMC, and that was in 2012, 13, 14 timeframe. I ended up joining IMC in 2016, and then immediately got involved in leadership. 2016 was my first conference with IMC, and you're correct. It was you and Henry's presentation that hooked me to the conferences. And just the first 3 hours of that presentation, I got the entire value of the entire conference and return on investment for membership, really. So I am really thrilled to be able to have you guys come back this year. Since I'm chair, it's going to be wonderful to welcome you back, because you had such an impact on my particular business. IMC USA is the certifying body for management consultants in the United States. Our certification is a process. And if you can get through the application, you will get through the whole thing. And that's what people say, is that the application is pretty tough. And it looks like, when you print it out, it looks like this big, thick booklet that you have to do, but it is an amazing experience, and it gives you an opportunity to actually step back and look at your career and what all you have done. And so once you prepare that, the rest of it's easy, because it is more about the exams, and the panel review is an opportunity for folks to ask you about your business. So it's not a hard test. It's about you. And so when it's about you, it's a lot easier. Ethics is top of the list for IMC. So there is an ethics exam, and the exams are not that hard. It's reviewing what you have been doing for your career. So we're a great association. We have wonderful, wonderful consultants. I can't think of a problem that I've had in my business or with a client that I don't have a handful of people that I can reach out to and get consult. And that's what we do for each other. We don't sell to each other. We support each other, and we help each other.
Well, that's great. And I certainly have a lot of respect for IMC. Similar to, I've been a member of the National Speakers Association now for 40 years. And one of our mantras is building a bigger pie. that if we work together and support each other through the highs and the lows, that there will be more for all of us. And I certainly have felt that spirit when I've attended the 3 IMC conferences that I've been a part of. So I know I speak for Henry when we say, or I say, thank you for inviting us to come and speak. And I'm incredibly honored to be your opening keynote speaker. It's going to be a great time in Louisville. Suzanne already put the information in the chat box. And if you're anywhere near a drive or a short flight, easy to get to, Louisville is a great city. Come and join us the third weekend of November. We'll see you in Louisville. And I will just say thank you for your good work that you have done as a leader of IMC and of course the chair. No one, unless they've sat in your seat and worn your shoes through a chair or presidential type position, can truly understand the volume of emails and calls and sometimes complaints. And, you know, as a past president of the National Speakers Association, we were a group of 3,500 speakers and no listeners, which essentially means that when one of our members has a problem, they have no trouble articulating it to the president. And I'm sure in your group that when there's a problem that needs to be fixed, there's no shortage of opinions and suggestions and recommendations from your members on how to fix or solve a problem in your association. So I both respect you for taking that on, and I empathize with you a little bit. And but it's going to be a great conference. All right, next, let's talk about your business. And your new book is titled The 7 Deadly Sins That All Business Owners Commit. A little bit harsh, but I know from reading the manuscript that you hold up a mirror to what we are both doing well from a business perspective, and shining a light or holding up a mirror to what can be better. Tell us a little bit about these 7 deadly sins.
So this book evolved over 30 years. So even though I've only been consulting on my own since 2008, the stories and the examples that I give in the book are from a 30-year career. And I've had some wonderful teachers, from both bad managers, great employees, challenging employees, the gamut. And what I found when I started to get the track record of the number of clients that I was serving as their consultant was that all the mistakes were the same. All the challenges were the same. The only difference is the number of zeros. So if you're a smaller business compared to a large business, the only difference is the number of zeros. You might have more employee issues if you're a larger company than you do as a smaller company, but the needs are still the same. You still need direction. You still need the tools. You still need the position guides. You still need to understand payroll. So again, the only difference is the number of zeros. And so as I began to write the book, I went through all of the emotions that I would think that all authors go through. And the big one was, is anybody going to read it? And I distinctly remember one day coming down the stairs, right as my husband was coming in from work, and I was talking to myself. I had spent the entire day writing about KPIs, key performance indicators. And so I wasn't happy at all with what I'd written. And so I was coming downstairs and I thought to myself, geez, Julia, no one really needs you to tell them what a KPI is. You could put that in a search engine and find out what the definition is. But what they really need is to understand how to do it, why it's important, and what it's going to tell you about the business, which is also the same example is every other chapter in the book, every other sin. So the book is actually about what to do to correct or improve on these 7 areas in your business that are robbing you from productivity, efficiency, and profitability. That's the nutshell.
You know, I had to laugh. I've been a one-person operation, or I mean, I do have an assistant, Kylie, the angel known as Kylie. But even as a one-person operation, most one-person operations still have HR issues with themselves. Can you give us an example, maybe 2 or 3 KPIs that you think even a micro business owner should be, a consultant, for example, should be aware of?
So an example that I use in the book and also at speaking is the difference of I want to increase sales. And when people tell me they want to increase sales, I always respond, that's great. Hope that turns out well for you. But how much better does it sound to say, I want to increase sales by 5% by the end of 3rd quarter? And so that having an objective puts the teeth in the goal. So your goal is to create more sales, but the objective is to create more sales by 5% by the end of 3rd quarter. And then on top of that, we can't just say it. We have to believe it. We have to build the strategies in order to achieve it. And then we have to track performance of that measurement. So I just covered 3 sins there. One is the performance management. One is the tracking, actually using a system to track. And the other is to manage by the numbers. So increasing sales is part of managing by the numbers. So anything that you are doing to manage the financials in your business is under managing by the numbers. So if you know your numbers, you know your business. If you don't know your business. So each of the deadly sins they're created around every issue that I've ever found in a business can fit in one of those 7 deadly sins.
Wow. It also sounds like language is important in how you frame these KPIs. Would that be correct?
Yes, they need to be actionable. They need to be something that you can measure. They need to be very specific, and they need to be time stamped. Otherwise, they're just general conversations, just general goals. So if you need to open a new region, you need to say, open a Northeast region by such and such a date. And then once in your performance management system, you're going to have those objectives, and then you're going to have the strategies that are going to help you meet those objectives. And then most of them are going to have, when it's a big change in your business, in order to effectively manage change, which is another sin, you need to understand the difference between a to-do list and a to-do list, because the to-do list is more than just something that you can just scratch off your list, right?
Could you say that again? The difference between a to-do list and a
ta-da.
Ta-da.
Like ta-da. The end of a show.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
The difference is one is a piece of paper that you write down the things you need to do, and the other is something that takes more time, more planning. It's more of a action plan than a list on a piece of paper.
I want to ask you a question. How did you come to be, from experience and your expertise, but you are a numbers gal, and you're passionate about numbers. How did that come to be?
Years ago, when I discovered how numbers can tell a story, because when I meet business owners and they say they're successful and they make all this money, first of all, I get them to understand that, okay, are you really making that much money, or is that the cash flow coming in and out of your business? And that's a big thing for a lot of folks. People start businesses because they have a passion, skill, or craft. They don't start businesses because they have a degree in accounting. And so they don't really, it's not that they don't have the capability or can understand how to interpret those numbers. It's just something that they haven't done. So that's one of the areas where I really have a good time working with clients. And when they understand what those numbers are saying about their business, it's fascinating. And I tell people that your numbers will speak to you. Sometimes they're speaking softly and sometimes they're yelling. But as long as you can listen to what the numbers are saying about your business, I mean, there are financial formulas out there that can tell you anything. How many days it takes you to get paid, how many days it takes you to bill someone, I mean, anything that you want to know about your business, you can learn in your P&L and your balance sheet. I guarantee it. Even poor performance for employees. So everything that is important can be managed in one way or another, even leadership.
There's a saying that I heard a number of years ago, what gets measured is treasured.
Yes.
And a lot of us and people that I work with and audiences that I speak to, and I'm gonna gently step on some consultants and coaches' toes a little bit when I say this, but many consultants are pretty good at serving their clients, but their own numbers, their own financial house and KPIs can be a hot mess. I guess I'm going to kind of put you on the spot maybe a little bit, but I want you to go back in your rear view mirror, and I want you to think about a client that you worked with that maybe was struggling a bit, or maybe they were doing okay, but did, vastly underperforming what their potential suggested they could do. I guess I'm thinking that you already have someone in mind. And they came to you for some reason, a problem, a challenge, an issue, couldn't see the forest from the trees. But by working with you, hopefully listening carefully and being open to your ideas, tried some of the things that you suggested and became one of your client, what we would call a client success story. Can you tell us a client success story?
Yes. So immediately I have someone in mind. I was introduced to this manufacturing company. 20 at the time was about 25 years old, doing very well, profitable, making money, had gone through a bit of a dip and was a very small negative, but it was a negative. It was a negative like 5.6%. Started working with them in May. And by the end of that year, we had turned it into a positive 8.9%, somewhere in there. Where people generally think they know where the issue is, what's fun in working with them is to help them understand what the root cause of these problems are. And they're always different than what they think. And so we did a what I call an organization for management project. And by the end of the following year, they were at a 23% net profit.
Wow.
And the beauty of that is the bottom line on the net profit was good, but the money that went into their pocket was even better. While their sales were down. So I was able to show the owner how to work smarter and not the old, working smart, not hard theory, but how when they were focused on what they did well and they weren't having to do a lot of repeat, fixing problems or redoing sales that they had already done, they were able to invest more into the company and they were happier, and their sales did continue to go up again. But the beautiful part was they were enjoying a lot more profit, which put millions in their pocket.
Wow. And you I might not remember the specific numbers, but you said 6.4, 8.9. You remember these percentages, just like the back of your hand.
Yes. That client turned into multi projects along the way, and they're still today, they're a client because of the impact. And the COO is just awesome to work with, and the employees are awesome. It's just a great company. So
what do you find with the SBA defines small business up to 500 employees? Well, in my mind, that's a pretty good sized small business. And the micro business world tends to be no employees to maybe 10 employees, depending upon the model, or whether it's a small manufacturing or small retail or small professional services firm. But when you think about those micro businesses, and I have a feeling that most of the people watching or listening to this episode are going to fall in that on their way to $1 million a year, or, on their way to 4, 5, 6 employees. What is something you find that's incredibly common with that size business? A mistake that somebody could look at very quickly.
So one of the earliest boot camps that I did, I had a client that she would go into homes and do reorganization. She would actually do organization. And she has grown now into working with folks who are downsizing. And she told me from the very beginning, when I first started talking to her, is that she was small. It was just her, that she didn't have systems and processes. She didn't need all that. And I said, well, do you get up in the morning and do you leave your house? And she, well, yeah. And I said, well, then you have systems and processes, because you don't just get up and go out the door. You have a system for getting ready. You have a process for getting physically dressed. You have a process for getting the coffee, breakfast, whatever you need. And so this is your system for getting up and getting out the door. And once I said that, she started to get it. And again, it's just a matter of zeros, whether it's financials or number of people. Business is business. The business side of things, it's the business side of things. And this lady, within months, she didn't even want to go to her mailbox and get her bank statement. And when she texted me one evening, it was literally 11 o'clock at night, and she texted me that she couldn't believe what she was seeing. And she told her husband that she had 100% more. And he was like, no, you forgot a zero. It was 1,000%.
Wow.
So, and now she is all over the place. You see her all over town, all over Facebook. She's just doing phenomenal. But it was an example of someone who just thought they were a small business, and they just, she wasn't really marketing. And now she has employees. She has agreements with, what is that company? Got junk or get rid of junk or something like that, where they just come and they pick up the stuff, and she's cleaning people's houses out so they can downsize, grandparents that are wanting to move from multi-level houses to a one-story house. So it doesn't really matter. Size does not matter when it comes to owning a business, because success is defined differently by individuals. Mm-hmm. And there are some people that, 2 or 3 people firm, that's what they want. That's what their definition is. And I myself had an opportunity in 2010 to have 10 trained sales professionals that were trained to sell management consulting services. And I took a chance. I had all of the eight. And so I hired them, hired a director of sales. And I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And this is where I practice what I preached. I had a plan. So that's sin number one, failing to plan. I had a plan. I knew what was going to happen. I put out there, okay, this is what I'm willing to lose. This is what I'm going to do on this experiment. Had a director of sales that I was putting in a hotel across a 3-state region every night of the week, 7 nights a week. So, there was a bit of an investment there. But I told him we had to do X by X. So our objective was set to what were the sales that we needed by this date to call this a success and to continue on with it. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it because I was becoming a management consulting firm owner, leader, and I wasn't the consultant. And that's what I like to do. So my definition of success is that I get to work with the clients. I get to have that experience and not, I like working with other consultants. And I have a few consultants that I bring in on the larger projects when I need that help, but I have an assistant, and I surround myself with, instead of employees, I have specific disciplines that I have those relationships with, and I pay for that, marketing or, the website, different things like that. Instead of having that staff person, I have companies that I have the relationship with, and that's what works for me. So businesses come in all different shapes and sizes for all different reasons. And that is one of the things that I think you and I have talked before about this, is that's the fun part, getting to know how and why and when people start businesses and how they develop. I mean, I have my first client I was talking about a few minutes ago started in the trunk of his car. And now it's a multi-million-dollar business. And it's just fascinating. If people could really understand the heart and the desire and the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that business owners put into their business, they would never shop a big box store again. They would always go to the small business. I mean, my husband, I remember in St. Louis when a local handyman, I can't think of it, tools and stuff, home goods store. There's something you call it, and I just went brain dead. I don't know. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, the Lowe's and the Home Depots, they came in and they replaced these small community service-based businesses because they were there to serve the people in the community, especially the guys who were fixing around the house and working in the yard and that kind of stuff to better their home value. And when that store closed, he was devastated because it was in St. Louis, Missouri. And St. Louis is known for the mom and pop restaurants and the individual businesses. And that was a really sad day because the big box stores replaced these folks.
The Walmarts, the Home Depots have hurt a lot of businesses on Main Street, USA. And so that's a great reminder that that small business, independent business owners need to support other small business and independent business owners. You said blood, sweat, and tears. There have been times when I've said blood, sweat, and fears.
Yes.
Because everybody seems to, fear never sleeps. It's interesting. You reminded me of when I was very, very early on in my career, which is about 39 or 40 years ago. And I was a one-person operation, and I had a client, and I'm sitting in my client's office one day, and he shared with me what you shared with our listeners. And that is, he said to me, Mark, do you want to know the difference between you and me? And I'm thinking he's rich. And and I said, what? And he said, zeros.
Mhm.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you have $100 problems. I have the exact same problems, only they're $1,000 problems. And one day, your problems are going to be $1,000 problems. And at that point, my problems will be $10,000 problems. And it wasn't a couple of years later, I owned a printing company with half a dozen full-time employees and a half a dozen part-time employees. And he reminded me of that conversation, because when we had the conversation, I had no employees. He had about 20 employees. And when all of a sudden I had 6 full-time and 6 part-time, he had 180 employees. And we had that conversation, and he said, we talked about our problems and they were the same. So I think your insight into zeros is incredibly profound. You know, one of the things that captivated me about our interview is that you bring a lightness or sense of spirit to numbers and problems and digging. In fact, you used fun and having a good time with some of these numbers and problems. Possible?
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And there are 2 exercises that I do with folks that really get them involved with their own numbers. And one of them is cost reduction versus sales. And so I'm able to show folks, we start out with, can you cut 2%? 2 cents on the dollar, just 2 cents on the dollar. And I always get that buy-in. That's an easy one. And so we go through this exercise and I show them what it's costing them to run their business down to the minute. We do the month, the week, the day, the hour, and the minute. And when the light bulb goes off, and it's like, what do you mean that's how much a minute costs? And when I can go back and show them, and this is just using numbers. Okay, is it easier to cut 2% or make this much more in sales? And the jaws will drop. The jaws will actually drop, because it can get into the hundreds of thousands for just small businesses, very small businesses. And then they start to realize every dollar that you save falls right down to the bottom line. So that's putting the profits in your pocket, not down the drain. And that makes a huge impact. The other fun thing that I do with folks is we figure out what day of the year they break even. And so when we do our forecasted budget and we say, okay, this is what our sales are going to be. And if this is what our sales are, this is how much it's going to cost us to produce those sales. And then here's what we're going to spend to run the business. And here's what's left. And we can do that in reverse. If we know what we want left and we know how much we're spending on those, rent and all those kind of expenses. And then we go backwards and go up the P&L and we decide, okay, we have to get these numbers. We have to sell this many of this product or this service. And so going backwards sometimes makes it click for some. Some need to go forward, some need to go backward. Doesn't matter. The end result is the same. And then we look at how many days a week they're open, days in the year that they're not going to be around, they're on vacation, the office is closed. And I literally do something really, really difficult. I take a calendar of the whole year and I print it off and I hand that out to everybody. And we go through and we mark off weekends, we mark off holidays, we mark off vacation, we mark off the days that they're not going to work. And then we count the number of working days. Literally, very difficult exercise, right? We count how many days are open, and that's all we need. We need to know what we're spending and what we're making and the number of working days. And then we can go through, do our math, really hard 3rd grade math. And then we go to the calendar and we count. and the closer you can get to January 1, the better. Because when we count how many days it's going to take us to actually pay all the expenses to make the sales that we forecasted, then we know at the next day we're at 100% profit every day that we're open. And that one really gets people excited. And they get a little mad too, because they start realizing all those coffee pot break room chats and all those days where you think that, oh, this is a great employee. Look, he comes in 45 minutes early all the time. And yeah, that's costing you, and that's dipping into your profit. So those two, I think, are my favorite. Cool. And it's so easy because we're not doing calculus. we're not trying to come up with all kinds of formulas. I mean, 1 and 1 is going to equal 2 every day, all day long. But we do get in there and we figure out 1 plus a quarter plus 3/4 is still going to equal 2. There's a lot of ways to get to 2. It's not always got to just be 1 plus 1. So we do have a lot of fun. I specifically remember a client one time, I asked a question and he looked up at me and he said, well, it's X percent, and it was a percent variance from this day, and last year it was this, and it just giving me all kinds of information. And then he said, aren't you proud of me that I knew that? And I said, yes, but not surprised, because we had been working together. And he's a very smart man. This was not just a run-of-the-mill guy, very smart man. He just had not, his cash flow management ability was superb. Never met anyone as good as he was. He said he was raised to pay his bills. His dad taught him that, you pay your bills first. And so no cash flow issue at all, but he just didn't understand how to manipulate. And I say that in a positive way, not a negative way, but how to really understand what that P&L was telling him about the business. And it can lead you to, how many employees you have. It can tell you everything that you need to know.
Sure. Switching gears a little bit, Julia, with a few minutes to go, and I've got a couple questions left for you, but you and I were both huge fans of the recently deceased Jim Horan. And can you share briefly a little bit about your relationship with Jim Horan? And I believe, if I know, you are also a huge believer in the one-page business plan.
I am a huge believer. I met Jim Horan at the same conference that I met you, the very first conference. We, in 2017, he and I had, that was the year we had quite a few National Speakers Association folks speaking at our conference. And at the awards banquet, I sat down and all these people started sitting at the table, and it turned out all of you guys. It was I was like at the right table, surrounded, and even someone from IMC sat down and said, "How'd you rate so good to have all the speakers sitting at the table?" And Jim Horan was sitting directly across from me, and it was like a 10-seat table, a 10-top, and he asked me what I did. And when I told him what I did, he just looked at me and he said, "You have something." And he had told the same type of story of when he went to his mastermind group and said, "I have this idea of putting all of this on one page." And his group told him, "You have something." And where Jim and I connected really was on that financial awareness of what that can do for a company to understand, because people will shy away from it. Number one, it's math. And number two, it's, oh, that's what the CPA does, so we really connected on that. And then he started talking to me about the one-page plan, and I took a look at it and I said, "Jim, before we have any more conversation, I have to show you what I do on boot camp, because what you have put on software is what I do day 2 boot camp 1. It's the second day afternoon was everything, pulling everything together. And what I was putting on 5 pages or more, he was getting on 1 page, and it was phenomenal. And I just was at the conference that year was in October. And over Thanksgiving week, I checked into a resort, and I was there by myself for a few days. And then my husband and son joined me for Thanksgiving, and I did their training because I knew this was going to be fantastic. I did their training. And day one, I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And Tony was not having to teach me the language or the definition. She was teaching me the software. I came pre-trained because I spoke that language. And I think it was day 2 or day 3, I emailed Jim and I said, am I allowed to sell during training? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, okay, I just made a $45,000 sale. So I still have that email where he said that was the first time in the history of their 20-something year company that anyone had ever sold like that and by the end of the week, I did another 6,000 or 7,000.
Wow.
Because I picked up the phone.
Sure.
And that was what he was known for. Pick up the damn phone.
Yeah.
I picked up the phone and I called my clients and I said, wow, this tool you're going to love it. And yeah, it was so easy. And that started a very disappointing because it was so short. Jim Horan became a friend and a mentor all in one. And I miss him, but his product is fantastic. And all of my planning and performance management clients use the one-page tool.
And I don't know what the right language is, so if I don't get this right, please correct me, but you are licensed or certified in using the software around the one-page business plan. Is that correct?
Yes. It's I'm what they call a master one-page consultant.
Okay.
Meaning that I use it. And so I don't, you use it or lose it, but it's,
Sure.
it's software in it for consultants. Any consultant that's doing any planning and performance management consulting or strategy consulting, it is a fabulous tool. Yes.
Great.
Absolutely.
Well,
it's one of the best that I've found.
Wow. Julie, I have one last question for you, and this is about you. When you look in your rearview mirror and you look at yourself on day 1 of your current business, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and give yourself on day 1 a piece of advice, what would your advice to your younger self be?
That's an easy one. Look at the resources that you have and don't be afraid to jump in and know that you have those resources. You mentioned earlier fear of failure, and that especially for consultants or solo consultants, I discuss that a lot with my business owners, but there's also a fear of success. And so what do you do if you open the door and all of a sudden you have all these clients? That can be as dangerous. And so, if I were to meet a new consultant starting, I would introduce them to people like you, people that had like Jim Horan's company, who now is run by Robert Scheer. These are tools, and these tools can help you just move forward a lot faster with a safety net, because you're not just trying to create it all.
Sure. It reminds me of the scene in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer when they're out, the Rudolph and the little boy who wanted to be a dentist, and they're talking and brainstorming, and he shouts, "Let's be independent together." No one accomplishes anything great alone. Julia, thank you so much for being our guest today and sharing your wisdom and insights and stories and ideas. And for those of you that are viewing this or watching this at a later date, Her new book will be coming out, The 7 Deadly Sins That All Business Owners Commit. Thank you so much for joining us. Indie Books International is headquartered out of Southern California. Our Indie Books Friends and Family Forum will be the first weekend of March 2023, where we will be back in person together for the first time since early March of 2020. So we hope that you will check us out, go to our website, indiebooksintl.com, indiebooksintl.com, and reach out. Let's start a conversation about your first book or your next book, and consider joining us for our forum where authors get together to help other authors and speakers get together to help other speakers. And there you have it. That's a wrap.